and that is Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. Firstly, let's start off with the weight. Who does the weight favour? Has Eubank been struggling to get down to 160? Will Ben be as effective moving up from welterweight? What do you think on that side of it?
James, you always ask the good questions, right? Normally it's like, how excited are you about it? And I'll tell you about that in a sec. But yeah, the weight is obviously crucial to this particular fight. I think the fact that it's a couple of years later probably doesn't suit Chris Eubank Jr. as much in terms of weight. I think coming down is never the easiest thing to do. Sometimes you lose your strength. Yes, you can rehydrate and there's the talk about the rehydration clause, but ultimately, if you're dragging yourself down over a number of weeks and it's not really comfortable, it is hard. There was a craze, a time where around Ricky Hatton's time, I think, when fighters were walking around a lot heavier and they dragged themselves down. I think Ricky, when he got on the scales, Acelino Fraser's another one, was made the weight for seconds, and then they were rehydrating and becoming a lot bigger in the ring. Nassim Hamidi, we mentioned earlier, I remember him weighing in at just under the featherweight limit, and they weighed him in the early hours of the morning, and he was many pounds heavier. So yeah, there was a craze of that for a while, but then I think Manny Pacquiao changed it because he started fighting at weights higher that were more natural, where his speed came up. So I quite like now the natural fight, the fight that you weight at, the natural weight that you fight at. I was with Carl Davis, my summit fighter, on Saturday night, and he's slightly stuck between super middleweight and light heavyweight. He's young, he's 9-0, but he knows to drag himself down to super middleweight doesn't make any sense at all because he's already 24. He's already really a light heavyweight. It's difficulty. It's like the heavyweights and cruisers. If you're caught in betwixt and between, like a Jaya Pattaya would be a small heavyweight, same as Alexander Usyk is. It's harder, but I think Usyk's proven, Pacquiao's proven. These guys have proven that the lighter weight fighter can often come up and be the same or be even better because they don't have to worry about struggling down to make weight. So I think that probably doesn't favour Chris Eubank Jr. However, Conor Benn is jumping up, so it is it's a big jump up for Conor in terms of weight, also in terms of level because Chris has fought at a higher level than Conor for his weight. So it is a jump up, but I think that jump up suits Conor because I think he walks around a bigger guy anyway. So I don't think he's going to have to worry about that in training. He can just focus on tactics and how he gets the better of Chris Eubank Jr. Or he says he's just going to go knock him out. Um, and Chris has got to rely on the fact that the conditioning team around him has got to be phenomenal, and he's got to be in the best fighting shape he can be. And if he is and strong at that weight, then Conor's in for a really tough night. But if he's not, because of that coming down in weight and being slightly older, then I think it does suit Conor, just being the more naturally lighter guy. But it's a fascinating one because of that, which is why everybody's talking about it, which is why it is controversial after what happened last time in the last couple of years. But it is a very exciting fight and a wonderful matchup. Obviously, two sons of heroes, taking us back to the glory days of Eubank and Benn and the two fights they had. And we want maybe a double here. Certainly, we've got the fight finally. Tottenham's a perfect setting for it. It's a terrific stadium for boxing. It was brilliant when we took AJ there for the Usyk one fight. It's the facilities are unbelievable, and Daniel Levy and the team are great, and they really get boxing. So I'm really excited it's landed there. And I think it's a fantastic night. It's got a super card on, and I think more's going to be added. So yeah, Ring Magazine card over here is great. I'm writing for Ring Magazine now, which is cool, and it's great what Turki Al-Sheikh has done to take over the Bible of boxing, and how cool a fight to have in our home city, which will hit the casuals. Everyone will want to watch this one. And I know there's controversy. Simon Jordan and I have our debates about it, and there's people that don't like the fight. But I love fights that get people excited. I love fights that bring in the casuals. I love ones where you don't know who's going to win. And I love fighters with personalities, and they both have infectious charisma. They just are. You stop and talk to them, or they stop and talk to you in their different ways. The Eubank way, which is very like his dad, or got a Conor Benn way, which is all from heart. And, they're both great talkers, and they're going to have a fantastic build up. And there's going to be spice and needle and hatred and all the things we like, taking us back to the days of Froch Groves, of course, of the days of their fathers. So they're not as good as their fathers, but they are good. And let's see how they get on April the 26th. I, for one, can't wait for it.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously there is controversy surrounding it. That is the failed drugs test surrounding Conor Benn. It's almost a constant black cloud that looms over him now, wherever he goes. Can he ever shake that off? Will the boxing fans who loved him very much once love him again?
I think he's shaking it off. I mean, it's been a long, long couple of years for Conor Benn. And look, I don't know the full extent of the legal back and forth, but I know that a lot of money's been spent, and that can't have been easy, and his career's been put on hold. And if he's wrong and serves his time, then fine. But if he's innocent, then that's got to be playing on his mind probably even more. I think the key is now that there has been decisions. He's allowed to fight here. He's carrying on with his boxing career, and that's what we've got to focus on. He's I said at the time that I was very surprised when it happened, because he was probably the least person I would think would be involved, because I've known him since he was a kid, and he's always trained really, really hard, and he's always wanted it so much, and I always believed in himself. So it was a surprising one. But look, I'm not the British board, I'm not the governing bodies, I'm not the drug testers. All I can do is see what I've seen, which has been pretty chaotic for the last couple of years for everyone concerned. I'm just sort of glad we've moved on, and that he's fighting again, and that we can see him back in a ring, because that's what we want from Conor Benn, and that's what he wants. It's his career. This is his livelihood, and there's rules in there for a reason. Obviously, we don't want drugs in any way, shape, or form in our sport. But there's different commissions, there's different governing bodies, there's different testings, there's different levels. It's complicated. And I heard Gareth and Spencer on Fight Night on Talksport the other night debating whether this sort of one league thing will work for the Saudis, getting into a UFC thing. And I think what was really coming out of it was sort of one set of rules, right? Universally, globally. There's different commissions in the States, there's the British board, there's commissions in Germany, commissions here, there, and everywhere. And I think that that's slightly the problem, that no one really understands. And certainly when it comes to drug testing, we don't. And we're in the sport. So we just have to listen and react to what's been given. And if there's punishments that have been handed down and punishments served, and then they're allowed to fight again, you just sort of got to go with the story. What I do know is that Conor claims his innocence 100%, and also that he feels that he's been very let down by a lot of people during this time, because he's lost a lot of money and lost a lot of chance to fulfill his career. And will this have had any detriment on the fight? That's the other thing you've got to think of. Chris Eubank, yes, he did get beaten by Liam Smith, but he won a great rematch. He's kept more busy. Conor has come back, but maybe he's not quite the same fighter that he was 2 or 3 years ago. We don't know yet. So I'm hoping that's not the case, because we want Conor Benn at his very best. We want Chris Eubank Jr. at his very best. We want a humdinger, and we want to see it again. Those are the sort of things I'm thinking. I'm just really pleased that it's going to happen. I'm pleased they're back in the ring. I can understand the controversy. It doesn't mean necessarily it's totally right. But then boxing isn't sometimes totally right. You've got to go with what the casual fans want. I want Fury Joshua. I don't think Fury has retired. Other people say, oh, it's too late and we don't need it and we can move on. And do I agree that Martin Riccoli deserves a chance in the world heavyweight title? Of course. But you've got to realise in England, if you go down the street, the names that people talk about are Fury, Joshua, and probably Benn and Eubank. So let's get them in a ring, and let's get the casuals involved in our sport, pack the undercard with, or fight nights or the headline. They could headline their own fight nights. Some of these cards, they're unbelievable, and the fight's incredible that Turkey is putting on. So let's just enjoy them and get the casuals over, a bit like I did many, many years ago when we had to do Logan Paul and KSI, and we were all like, do we really want to do this? And when we did it, we really enjoyed it, because they were great fun to be around. And I think we had Devin Haney, maybe Billy Joe Saunders that night. We had a couple of good world champions on the card, and that was to get the young into boxing. And I think we've got to look at it this way, that any fight that brings light, exposure, heat, stories, talking points to the casual fans is a good thing. So I think we've got to just get on and enjoy it. The fight's been made. If that's out of our control, it's been made. What's our reaction? Me, for one, I'm excited. I want to see it. It's too long coming. I wasn't as sure about it first time around. I've got to be honest. Wasn't as sure about it first time around before what happened with the weights and everything. I'm more settled with it now because I think that the two bodies have changed and time has changed. But yeah, I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting night for British boxing.
It's definitely a fight that I'm looking forward to seeing, and I like the matchup. I like the backstory, with the fathers and the history between the two. But just to stick on the theme of playing devil's advocate, the magnitude of this fight has increased. We've seen it go from the O2 now to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, so we can see the fight itself is bigger now than it was in 2022. And obviously with the financial incentives with Turkey Al Sheikh getting involved, does it show though that there's no real deterrent for cheating in boxing, whether you're innocent or guilty? The facts are he failed a drugs test. So is there any deterrent in there? Should lifetime bans be introduced into boxing? What are your thoughts on that situation? And obviously we're
That's
not.
something we've talked about for a long time. Is there any place for drugs in boxing? No. Will there be drugs in boxing? Yes. And I've talked to Thomas Hauser at length about this over the years, and he's got his own opinions about how many fighters have dabbled, how much access to drugs there are in boxing. And I've spoken to fighters who believe that their opponent has been on something, juiced up, and then they feel it's not a playing field. So I know fighters that have thought, do I do the same because it puts me on the same level? So it's a very, very difficult subject. It's a real grey area, as I said to you, with all the commissions, all the different testing, the levels of testing, the money it costs for different testing. It's a incredibly difficult subject. They call boxing the Wild West, right? Well, that's something at least Turkey is trying to organise and get the best fighting the best. And we've got to be thankful for that. We're not going to change everything in boxing at once. Do I think that we have to take drugs more seriously? Yes, I've always thought that. But the trouble is, we just don't know. A fighter can claim his innocence, a trainer or a conditioner or anyone that's helping out. There's a lot of people involved in a fight camp these days. Sometimes you may never know. Sometimes they do know and they're hiding things. And sometimes they get tested guilty and then sometimes they don't. Sometimes the B sample's different. And sometimes it's like, well, that's not going to give me any real advantage, or that might, or that can be bought off a shelf or whatever. They have a lot of problems in tennis as well, and that's another individual sport, athletics too, tennis recently as well. A lot of problems, and I tend to think, look, if I'm not a governing body, right? I'm a broadcaster, I'm a freelancer in boxing. I'm not a governing body. I'm not a Robert Smith, and I feel for him. I'm not Charlie Giles, anyone from the board. I'm not the German commission. I'm not the head of the Vegas commission. All those. They're the ones that've got to decide whether their fights should go ahead. So they're the ones that need the best testing. The trouble is the best testing costs a lot of money. So you can't sort of have VADA testing and the ones they turn up at your door every 5 minutes in normal fights, because people just can't afford that, and promoters won't pay for them because they're putting the risk on their shows. Fighters won't pay for them if they don't have to, unless they're getting massive purses. Now, the good news about Saudi and Turkey is that the money is going up. It's great opportunities for fighters. So maybe this is an area that Turkey can get involved in as he hopefully starts to sort of, build a sort of system. I think if he's got the money, then it's and he wants to go further with this, then I think it's something that should be top of his agenda, because health and safety to the fighters is paramount. Fortunately, over the years, there's been a lot of success stories with fighters that have got injured and recovering. Spencer Oliver is one of them. The life was saved of Paul Ingle and Michael Watson and many others, but there's been lives we've lost as well. They're down to boxing, and I've been involved and around fighters that have lost their lives, and it's incredibly traumatic when you get close to them. But often you hear their families say they would have died if it wasn't for boxing, because of the situations they found themselves in before. So we know boxing is a fantastic sport. It's full of dedication, discipline. It gets people off the streets. It's great for that focus, that single-minded focus, but also gets you into competition, gets you into tournaments, gets you into fighting for big belts. And you want a level playing field, and there should be no tolerance for drugs. What that is And who decides that is the difficult area. But maybe there needs to be a committee, or there needs to be, the people that are really putting the money in, the big promoters and Turkey and his team, who say, right, enough's enough. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's make sure that every single thing we're associated with, it's a yes or a no. This is, if you're found guilty for this, you get this. If you're found guilty for this, you get this. This, you get a life ban. It's one strike, two strikes, no strikes, for whatever substance. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. You sort of need a committee where scientists will tell you what these are actually doing. Conditioners and trainers will tell you what they need without that. And you need all of that. And you need fighters to say, sign things to say if they do, maybe they have, I don't know how it works, but maybe they sign things to say that I can never and should never take drugs. And if they do, what is that punishment? Is it that it'll be a hearing, and it'll be a year or 2 years, or will it be 4 years, or will it be a lifetime ban? Because yes, the deterrence for drugs have got to get stronger, but also for those that are innocent and we don't know who they are. It's got to be a really, really nasty process as well. All we can do is the best we can, but I think there are improvements in this area, definitely. And I'm hoping maybe if I get a chance to speak to Turkey Al-Sheikh or some of his people, I'll mention that I think as a fan and a journalist who's covered the sport for a long time, it's something that needs to really be heavily addressed. And for now, we've got to take the words of the commissions and the testing authorities, and a fight's been made. It's not happening. It's not happening back to the 26th. And I'm sure there's other fights with fighters who've been found guilty at certain times that they still fight on. We know that happens. So yeah, it seems that you can go in different parts of the world under different commissions. So what works? Probably universal ruling, if it can be done, governing bodies agreeing if it can be done, a sort of that, so that people know what the rules are. Tony Belly made great points on TalkSport the other night, saying that's what it needs. It needs a governance over the whole sport, not just in different areas. And everyone's got the way they work. So certain parts of the world do it in different ways. But yeah, in a long-winded answer to your question, there should be zero tolerance for drugs in sport, and how we deal with it is down to hopefully a growing central body who can get hold of it and hold of the sport and try and make the bad parts really okay, and so that we get our fantastic sport back to the best we possibly can. It's never going to be perfect, but we've done some good things in the last couple of years. Promoters are talking to each other, fights are being made, fighters getting more opportunities, more money. So yeah, I always like to stick on the positive, and there's a lot of positives in boxing at the moment.
It definitely is. Adam, I'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time. Always a pleasure speaking to you.